Super excited to show you this little beast. I call it the Gator, just because that's at least what the box in the hard shell is called. So this unit is actually what got us through COVID, but also, not just that, it enabled a lot of transition periods to happen successfully. For example, the introduction of the Presonus Mixer to church. Now this was actually designed, I built it last fall, but for live stream. So if you take a look at the front, you'll see that we have our Presonus 16 channel mixer in the bottom, and we have 3 monitors here which show you what's being shown, like 3 HDMI inputs for the live stream, for example, your different cameras and your slides. So it's kind of St. Greg's in miniature, because all the systems that are in here have been essentially replicated inside the church. Granted, this is really small. In the space of 6U, that's kind of how the cases, the spaces are designated. You'll see that this is taking up the space of 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So in the space of 6U, and then only 14 inches in width, there's lots of connections and a lot of things going on. Now there's even some things that you don't see on the front but are actually in here. So we have our mixer on the bottom. This is a power distribution unit, and what the power distribution does is that it smooths out your signal. So an AC signal from your outlet can sometimes have a little bit of jitter and it'll introduce noise. Well, this gets rid of that. And then also, well, we can talk about this more later. We have our 3 monitors here, which just receive 3 HDMIs. But then also in here, we have 2 wireless microphones available in handheld and lavalier format, as well as our control surface for the Presonus Mixer. Also inside here, in the back and tucked in, there are the 2 wireless microphone receivers. Also on the back is 3 HDMI video encoders, and that's actually where you plug in your HDMI cables and your sources. Another thing which, to make this happen, that's in here, you don't see it on the front, but we'll take a look in the back. There's a little Wi-Fi module. And that is connected to our Presonus Mixer down here. And so that within range of that Wi-Fi, you are able to control via iPad or via computer all of your volume sliders and EQs and effects and everything. So I would say in a nutshell, that's what's going on in this mixer. And it's what's really cool about having this portable, super compact setup is that this can be moved and taken around. Now, for a while, this was tucked into church and powered up the church. Then later, it powered up youth ministry. Because it's portable, it can also power up retreats. That could be in the middle of anywhere, honestly. So, actually, super excited to take this apart because I really want to show you what's inside, how it works, and everything that's going on. So I would say, as a musician, this is undoubtedly my favorite unit. This is a Presonus 16R audio mixer. And this is, I would say, the modern organ. And I'll tell you why. I know I guess this is getting a little bit theoretical, but so the organ was originally designed to be analogous to the human voice and to fill up the church with beautiful, nearly with a human vocal tonality. And as it progressed, began to fill up the church and have multiple different sounds, and eventually, it becomes a little bit more complicated. But so many churches in Europe are sometimes even identified by their organs. And for example, you might have, a certain church in Austria which has a very Baroque organ, beautiful, and they're just so characteristically unique in their sound and their tonality and how they're specifically designed for the church space. You have something like, wow, my light is blinking. You have something like Notre Dame Cathedral, which is the paradigm example of an incredible organ that will just blow you away, literally. There are so many connections that go on, and it's such a complex instrument. You not only have just one simple set of pipes, but you also have your flutes, you also have your strings. There's so many different things going on, and if you ever looked especially at the older consoles, the mechanical ones, you take a look at inside and how the different connections are going on. It's unbelievable. It's really unbelievable. I think that this is similar. So just like an organ comes in different stops, you have your 4-foots, you have your 2-foots, 8-foot, 16s, 32s, and sometimes 64s. This also comes in different stops, you could say. This particular one is 16 channels. The one we have in church is 24, but you can also get them in 36. If you wanted to stack these, you can also stack them and network them together, and then you can, have 36 channels times 2, 36 channels times 3, or even 4. And so what that means is that you're able to have many, many, many different inputs and fill the church with those inputs. What this does is it amplifies sound, and it isolates exactly what you want to hear in the music that you're really trying to pull out of your musicians and vocalists. So just like the organ was originally designed to mimic the human sound and to fill the church with that, so this one actually fills the church with human voices and instruments as well. So I guess it's a little bit theoretical, but I kind of sometimes think about how they're similar. What's going on here is actually its own universe, and I think that the software aspect of this will actually require its own episode. But we're just going to take a look at this unit itself as a piece of hardware for now. So you might already be familiar with a Scarlett audio interface. And what that does is it turns an audio signal, which you'll get from an audio cable, either a 1/4 inch or an XLR, into a USB signal. And if you want to get one that's 2 channels, you'll probably be paying $150. If you want to get one that's 4 channels, you'll probably be paying nearly $500. If you want to get one that does 8, you'll be paying nearly $1,000. Now, this one is 16 at a total of $1,000. Now, the economic value of that is incredible. Honestly, there's no comparison, and it does the same thing beautifully. From a studio aspect, the USB audio that you're getting is in 24 bits, and you can record individual channels. So there's a lot that's possible with that. What that means is not only can you have a great sound in church and be able to get your levels and your EQs and your compressors and your gates just right, but you're also able to take it to a whole new level if so desired. And what I mean by that is that if you eventually wanted to go in the direction of using all of these channels as inputs to USB and then into a computer, and then through software manipulate each individual channel, add the effects you want, and even potentially include different MIDI controllers with its own sounds from your computer, that's all possible. There's a lot that's possible. And something like this can help make that transition possible. So the front is super simple. Over here, you'll see that there is a headphone jack. Each channel itself, you can either input a 1/4" cable, an instrument cable, or an XLR. So every single one is super versatile. And every single channel can provide 48-volt phantom power individually. And you can select which one. It doesn't do all of them standard if you don't want it to. And then here you have just a little knob for your headphones. And you actually have an SD card slot. You have an SD card slot, and that's really cool because then if you have a music group, a choir, or an ensemble, you can record their performance in a 24-bit quality. This SD card slot isn't going to record the individual channels, however. It's going to record your master audio. On this 16R, there are 12 channels in the front, but then we have little stragglers over here. We have an additional 4. And then we have a couple other things going on. So we have our main outs over here, right and left. Honestly, I don't use them. I just use these guys here. And there are 6 1/4" outputs, not powered. These are not powered. So if you're looking to plug your speakers right in over here, it's not gonna work. You'd have to go through an amplifier first. What I do in church is using this this 1/4" output. It goes into a direct box, so it turns it into an XLR format, and through a 100-foot cable goes straight to the sacristy and provides audio for the live stream. And I actually have these two going for a stereo to provide the live stream. Now this one over here, number 1, goes to the church and provides the church audio. There are 6 outputs over here, and each of them represent 6 unique mixes. So that's the amazing thing with this, is that not all of these have to be the same. You can have a completely different volume mix going on in every single one of these. And these can be linked as stereo, so 1 and 2 can be considered stereo. And so you can even pan left and right. And then the other one, this is actually I have linked in stereo, so it provides live stream. And then another one can be a monitor for your band or for the music area and your vocalists. So that can be, so for example, if there's a monitor underneath your vocalists, you can have it so you just hear those vocals that they need and maybe the bass instruments and instrumentation that they need to hear to be in tune and to be in sync. Yeah. Now this 16R only has 6 individual 1/4" outputs. If you get the 24, I think it has 10. And then if you get the 36, it has even more. So what that gives you is, if you get the one with more outputs on it, is that you can potentially have another one for another monitor, maybe for a different section of your music area. You can have another one that would be maybe for the hearing impaired or something like that. So unless you just want to be simple and have the hearing impaired hear the same thing as maybe your church audio, in which case you'll want to take the audio from a different system, one that also captures your presider's microphones and your ambo and your altar and all of that. These two main outs, I don't use them just because in the software, if you control the main outs, it controls all of the sliders across the board for these. And what I really wanted access to was just an individual mix, and so I really didn't need this one. This one over here, it says network audio, and it's an interesting connection. On the outside, it's like almost like an XLR cable type of deal, but then on the inside, it's more like an Ethernet cable. What this is for is if you wanted to link one Presonus unit to another. This can also work as an audio snake. I don't know if that's entirely necessary, but you could if you wanted to make your whole system Presonus, including your presider's microphones and everything. You could have one of these in your music area, another one inside your sacristy, capturing all of that, link them, and then just with one iPad, control it all. All of those individual inputs, not just 16, but let's say maybe even 16 plus 24 channels, however many you would need. So I don't use this, but you could use it. Over here, it says control. This is a connection to a Wi-Fi network. So this requires a hardwire to a router. And later I'll be able to show how that's connected. And that router does not necessarily need to be connected to a modem, though it could. A modem provides internet and data. This unit doesn't need internet. Well, to control this, you don't need internet, you just need Wi-Fi. There's a difference because there's your modem, which is typically connected to your telephone pole, but then the modem is then attached to your Wi-Fi router. And a Wi-Fi router is all we need in this case. Then over here is a USB. And so just like a Scarlett audio interface, this becomes an audio interface. And so then it can be connected to any of your standard DAWs. A DAW being a software named for Digital Audio Workspace. And that can be a software like, it could be part of Adobe, like Audition. It could be Pro Tools. It could be Cakewalk. Actually, Cakewalk just expired. Their company is closed, which was unfortunate. Or it could be like the Presonus software called Studio One, which is something that I just got and I'm really looking into and excited to start breaking that open. I think that'll be another episode, but I'm still learning it at the moment. So this USB signal, what it's gonna allow you to do is two things. Yes, you can, actually, what am I saying? Yes, that's an amazing thing. Being able to input all of these 16 channels, or 24, or 36, or whatever it is, into individual channels into your DAW software and hit the record button, and you record all of those individual channels in 24-bit, beautiful crystal clear audio. And then you can manipulate it afterwards, make it sound just right. It pretty much turns a church into a studio. Also, what it does is, if you connect into a computer into this USB port, you can also log into the UC Surface, which is the software that you use to control all of your volume and to control all of your parameters, EQ and gates and stuff. It's an incredible software. And you can control that software, UC Surface, with a computer or through the Wi-Fi router using this connection through an iPad. Through an iPad or no, maybe not an iPhone. And I'll show you that in here, I've got an iPad tucked away with a little charger and a cable. So I am really excited to show how the software itself works. It really is its own universe and has its own learning curve. Just like an organ, one of the huge advantages of this Presonus unit is that you can save your settings, and you can have hundreds of settings. So if for one ensemble or for one choir or for a mass that stays consistent and its members are fairly consistent, maybe they come in on a weekly or monthly basis, or maybe you have a certain mass which is just so big, maybe like Christmas Eve. Well, you can save whatever settings you used during that event, and then in a matter of seconds, pull it up if you need it again. It can also be backed up, let's say if this crashed, and it can be transferred from one mixer to another. And a lot of that is done in the software. So it really is incredible how much is going on in this. It really doesn't take too much space, and really all you see are inputs and outputs. There's nothing you control manually, or at least I suppose through hardware, because there are no knobs really at all, and so you have to access this through software, through your iPads or through your computers. What's cool about that too is that it can be tucked away, just put on a shelf. Most people won't even know what it's doing or that it's actually doing everything that it does. And then you just have your cables in here, neatly routed and then, thrown to the back. You make your cables look nice and it hardly takes any space. You can really put this anywhere in your church. It's not like you're introducing a whole honkin' rack. In church, all we have is I got a little L bracket with a 4U space, and this is 1U, but the one we have at church, the Presonus unit, is 2U. And so I just got a little L bracket rack mount or ceiling mount. And so it just kind of hangs off of the top of a wooden panel, and it sits underneath the existing analog mixer. And in the space of 2U for that 24R Presonus unit, and then a power conditioner exactly the same as this one, we have a completely new system. Yeah. So I would say that's about it as far as hardware goes. Obviously, this one is your power. You do have an individual switch here, but if you leave this on and just have a power conditioner like this one that turns on everything, well, then you're kind of all set. What this power conditioner does is you just plug it into your AC outlet, obviously, and it does a couple things. First of all, it limits your power to 15 amps, and so you're not going to be able to draw more than 15 amps. But that's not a big deal, because honestly, a lot of these units aren't going to take nearly that much. We don't have an amplification system in here. This is all just for control. And then on the back of this, I think there are like 8 or 10 outlets. So it's pretty much like a glorified power strip. The reason this is important is that it also smooths out your AC signal. So you might have seen or experienced that when you plug a mixer into an AC outlet, sometimes you might get a little hum. Or if you're plugging into multiple AC outlets that are on different circuit breakers, and connect them with audio cables, or that may introduce a hum. So if you can, just use one AC outlet for your for all of your systems in your music area. And then this power conditioner is actually going to smooth out. So an AC outlet will have just a little bit of noise in itself. And so this will smooth it out. So that's what that is for. I guess that's the extent of that. It's in the space of 1U. This we can come back to because that's entirely different. On the back, I want to show you. There's a lot going on back here. So you can see that I'll just point out the different parts first. This is the back of the Presonus unit. I already showed you on the bottom. Over here is our Wi-Fi router. You can see it has our 3 antennas here. We have 2 wireless microphones or receivers here. They're both Shure. So this one is for the handheld, and this one is for the lavalier. I think I forgot to show that, but you'll see that just had some extra room. So I thought I would put in a wireless handheld here and a lavalier system, which can either connect with a lavalier or, get this, a 1/4-inch instrument cable. And so, like if you're doing a conference or retreat, you could potentially have your main speaker wireless. Yeah, so that's, I guess the last part that's on the front of it. Well, on the back, oh, sorry. It's a little heavy. I'd say it's verging on 45 pounds. And there's still a couple things I'd like to put in here. Like I think you could fit a battery here so that you really could be in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the forest, or upper Michigan or something, you know? That'd be really cool. Yeah, so our 2 audio receivers here, our Wi-Fi unit here, the power conditioner is in the back, and all of our power, you know, this has to be powered, this has to be powered, this has to be powered, our Presonus unit has to be powered. I have a USB hub over here which has to be powered. There are a lot, and then the 3 screens in the front, that's powered. So there's a lot of things that power conditioner is powering up. So if you can forgive the mess of cables, and if you can, I think we can just try to go through it a little bit. So a lot of this was just disconnected, so I could pull this unit out. But you can see on the very left here is our power. Over here is our USB audio. So I'm going to connect that. Then over here, you'll see that I have a little 10-inch cable going like this into our Wi-Fi router over here. And so this 10-inch Ethernet cable, we're gonna plug into our Presonus unit. And at the moment, that is the only thing I have plugged into this Wi-Fi. Now, if I wanted to make this Wi-Fi unit have data, all I would need to do is connect it to a modem here. And that could be as simple as connecting an Ethernet port or an Ethernet cord from here, from this Wi-Fi unit, to wherever it might be, coming from either a sacristy, an office, a rectory. I don't know where you'll find data. It could be at a retreat center. Well, all of a sudden, this whole thing becomes connected to the internet. And then, if you wanted to connect your computer then to the internet, you could just connect through this Wi-Fi router, hardwire it, which would probably be the best way to go. Yeah, this wasn't a super expensive Wi-Fi unit. I think it was only about 60 bucks on Amazon, and it really doesn't need to have that much bandwidth. I say that because all it's transmitting is very, very simple data from, in this case, all I've been using it for is to control the UC surface for the Presonus. So just that. What's really cool about this Presonus unit, I just keep remembering things, is that you can control it with multiple devices. I do it all the time. We have one iPad, and I say this because there are many, but one of the iPads is controlling the audio for this, particularly for the live stream, and the sacristan will control that audio. Then another one of the mixes controls the church, and so we have another iPad which I usually do it, or I'll have someone do it for me, but they'll stand in the back of church till all of the different volumes and gains sound appropriate, or for a sound check, for church. And then you can have a third, fourth, you can have a lot, as long as people have the login information. And you can set users and passwords, and have multiple users, and give them, designate access to certain things, and limit the access if you want. If you're just introducing this, don't start limiting access right away. Just give yourself some room, give some other people some room. Just let them have at it, honestly. Give them access to I'd say, everything. Yeah, oh, where were we? I think that's almost everything that's connected. You see that here are two just 1/4-inch cables, very super short cords, and those are coming from our two two microphone receivers here. So I'm gonna plug that into channels 15. I actually gotta screw this in. 15 and 16. There we go. So our wireless audio is hooked up. And then we still have 1, 2, plus 12 in the front channels available for more audio inputs, and 16 for certain locations where this is being used is sufficient. So, for example, when you're bringing in an ensemble of, I'd say, about 7 people, and so 7 or 8 people, you might have your 6 vocals and another 6 instruments. So that's 12. Well, it still leaves you 4 more. So 16 is a lot, and it can do a lot and handle large groups. Now, if you want to give yourself just some breathing room, or even some room for development, or just consistency, so you don't have to unplug and rewire things for a specific event, and just give their certain instruments, their own channels in a music area. I don't know if that made sense. Well, then just get a 24 channel off the bat. I think it's only a $300 difference, and that will give you 8 more channels, or get a 36, and that should give you enough breathing room to be able to do what you need to do. So that's Presonus. Just about as far as I can think of, as far as the hardware and the unit itself. It's been super dependable. And you can leave it running. You don't have to turn it off every single time. And then I showed you the Wi-Fi unit in the back. Let's see what else is here that you can see. Well, I guess what I'll do now is we can start talking about the video component in all of this. This was also designed not just for audio, but for video. And if you bear with me for a second, think of all of this as a funnel. Now we're talking specifically for live stream now, not just acting as an audio mixer. Because in church, it's as if you have all of your inputs and the output, and control your volume, well, you're good to go. You're done, right? But for live stream, there's a little bit more going on because you're turning everything into a digital signal. So your audio has to be turned into a digital signal, but then also your video has to be turned into a digital signal. And just think of it as a funnel. It's a funnel. You're funneling 16 channels of audio, potentially a very large ensemble, either 8 vocals and instruments and everything, into just a beautiful stereo or mono, single channel or stereo double channel audio. You're funneling it into that and turning it into a digital signal. Then the other thing you're funneling is HDMI signals from your cameras and HDMI signals from your computer slides. And if this gives you an idea, the way this one was designed was that it funnels it all into a single, get this, a single USB cable. All of the music you have, all of the instrumentalists, vocalists, all of the video, your different cameras, and the work of everyone who is manning those cameras, the work of everyone who is, working on your sound is going through this single cable. Plug this into your computer, and then your computer is able to take that beautiful audio and take that beautiful video and process it from there and upload it to the internet. So there's a lot going through this. So it's a funnel. Now, after I gave that little spiel, I'll say that I kind of did this wrong. Instead of routing this into one individual USB cable, it would have been good to keep some of the pieces separate. So one USB cable for the audio, and then one individual USB cable for each video. That way you have a total of 4 USB cables, and then your computer, as long as you have enough USB inputs on your computer, then you're good to go. The only reason that's better is because then these units communicate better with your computer. But at the moment, that's what's been going on here, is that everything has been going through this one cable. So that's ultimately the goal. That's ultimately the goal, is to process all of your audio and digitize all of your video. This unit in the front is a little bit superfluous, but it's great just for monitoring. So what it does is our video inputs, our HDMI signals, first go into these HDMI video screens. So our 1 camera here, 2 camera here, and slides here, for instance. And that way you're able to see the video before it even goes through the video encoders, like I showed before. The video encoders, which turn a video or HDMI signal into a USB signal, right? So into an H.264 video encoding format, and essentially turns your HDMI camera into a webcam. Well, before that happens, you're able to see what's going on. Has this been as helpful as I thought it might be? Yes and no. Yes, because it's nice to see that your video is working properly, because sometimes going into the software, since you still have a couple things you need to do, it's nice to know that your video actually is working. Yes and no. No, because you almost don't even need this because you will be able to see your video on your computer, on your software. I like having it though. It looks super cool. And you know, the space in the back, because it's a thin unit, I'd say it's only about yay wide. The space in the back is being used for, you know, the microphone receivers are in the back, right where the extra space from this unit is. On this, it's a every single monitor has its own control and its own power button, so you can plug in the headphones and listen to every single video. You can also, well, turn it on and off. You can you know, go to menu and make sure that your colors look like they should, your sharpness, your contrast, your brightness, all of that can be kind of set here. Now, a situation that something like this might be really helpful is if you're dealing with cameras that are, I guess, motorized or on a gimbal, you know, almost like a security camera, except I wouldn't recommend getting a security camera. I recommend going with something more like a Canon series, you know, something that has a really, really good lens on there. Again, talk about funnel. You want to get some good light in your live stream, some good glass. You want good lenses, because that's what people are going to see. So every single one provides just a great way to monitor your video. And on top of this whole thing, you can kind of even place your computer, and that would be, for instance, your live stream workhorse. And then you might have another computer which is dedicated towards slides. And that computer which is dedicated towards slides could either be doing something like PowerPoint, it could be doing something like Google Slides, or it could be doing something like ProPresenter. And if you're using ProPresenter, something like this might be helpful, because then what you're able to do is use your computer as just a control surface, because that way you're able to select the different options, the different slides, and then just use this one as this HDMI as a second monitor. Every single one of these can act as a second monitor, because they're just super small, but every single one is HD. You can also get these units not just capable of doing HDMI, but also something called SDI? No, I think it's SDI, which is also an HD signal, but it's a different type of cable. And the cable is different, but I think is able to travel a little bit longer distance. I think the most common place you'll see this type of cable is in professional video equipment, when you're dealing with like newscast type of, you know, shoulder type cameras. They'll have not an HDMI output, but an SDI output. Well, I designed this system for HDMI input because that's all I really saw myself using. So that's what's going on there. Again, I'm trying to think if there's anything on the back here. Oh yeah, I gotta take one more thing apart. I could take this thing apart all day. I could also build these all day. It was super fun. So, we were talking, I think, as far as audio, we're set with audio. But I want to show you this video aspect because this is super important. So, an HDMI signal from a camera cannot be inputted directly to a computer unless you have in your computer, sometimes you'll see these in, you know, towers, you know, computer towers. Unless you have in your computer an internal, you know, video encoder, and so it's pretty much the same thing. Well, in this case, it's external rather than internal in the computer. Over here, you'll see that here are our HDMI inputs. So you can plug your one camera in here, your second here, and your slides here. A lot of this you can kind of see just drilled myself, and so this might not be the cleanest, but it does what it needs to do. All right, so I'm taking this apart now. I kind of needed to unscrew some things just to be able to kind of take it off the rack a little bit. You'll see that right now I just unscrewed these HDMI inputs. And here you can see that these cables are visible now. The first place these go to is these short HDMI cables go into the video, triple monitor video thing in the front. Each of these will go to one screen. Now that monitor in the front then has a loop output. So it inputs and then shows it on the screen, but then it also outputs the exact same signal. And that HDMI output then goes through these HDMI cables. And you'll see that these go directly into 3 back-to-back video encoders. Now, I guess these are called HD video capture devices. I like these particular ones because they were super compact, they're aluminum and super strong, and they stack really, really well. Now, you can't exactly buy this version anymore. For whatever reason, they sold out really quickly. I'm not sure if that was because of COVID or something, but these were bought way before any of that happened. So you'll see that on the one end, if I can move this away, HDMI comes into the video encoder on the one end, and then on the other end is a USB cable. Each of these USB cables, in this case, just goes into a USB hub. And that's exactly what this red wire is over here, that's the Presonus unit. And that Presonus unit then went into this USB hub. The reason I said I wouldn't recommend using a USB hub is that sometimes computers work better when they have a direct connection to a hardware unit, particularly audio. So if you can, or you should, or this should be connected directly to your computer. That's the one thing I would change, and probably will change now that I have all of this out. And then instead of having all these video cables going into USB hub, connect those individually into USB ports into your live stream computer workhorse. Yeah, so the one revision I might make to this entire thing is eliminate the need for a USB hub. It's a great thought that everything should go through just one cable in the end. I think that is cool, and it did work. But moving forward, I think the system will be a lot more reliable if all of that is separate. So that's what's going on in this little panel. It's all kind of tucked into this 2U panel that's on the back. And when it's actually connected in here, it just looks super clean, and all you see is just a few cables that are still sticking out. And I think the last thing I would show with this unit, and it's the introduction to a different episode and a different little universe, but if you have your iPad on, this is UC Surface over here. It's this little icon. And if you open that up and connect to your Presonus unit, you'll see that it in many ways resembles an actual analog mixer. You have control of your volume sliders up and down. You'll have control of your initial gain leading up into that channel. you'll have your high pass filter. This top section actually, if you can imagine the signal flow and signal chain going in this direction. So after you get through your initial gain stage, then it goes through your gate. You can turn that on or off. It goes through your compressor, turn that on or off. Through your equalizer, turn that on and off, and manipulate your EQ. And that's actually super powerful too, because it's so much more capable than an analog EQ system, like on a typical analog mixer. Then you have a limiter here, which many analog mixers don't allow. But what that does is it caps the volume of a particular channel or a particular mix. So then you have your overall volumes here. Then you have your outputs over here. This is your main, and I'll just give a quick recommendation now, is that on this main mix, have all of your volume sliders set to a volume gain of 0 over here. Otherwise, you're not going to hear these other individual outputs. Then you have your main volume over here. These are individual mixes and different outputs. Remember how on the back of this Presonus unit I was saying that there are 6? Well, it'll show your 6 different auxiliary mixes, and you'll be able to manipulate them independently. But that's why, again, I recommend just note to self, keep this main, keep everything set to a gain of 0, rather than halfway or 0. Otherwise, you're not going to hear anything in these other individual ones. Then you also have your effects, where you can control the volume or the amount of a particular effect in an individual audio channel. And then you have a total of, I know in the 16R, you can have a total of 2 different effects being used. And then you can kind of pick what those are going to be. You have your reverbs, you have your delays, a couple, you may have a distortion, I'd have to double check. And you can kind of select what it's going to be over here. Filter delay, stereo delay, ping pong delay. Let's see. Then this is a reverb, so you have ambience, small room, bright hall, warm hall, gated hall, large hall, plate. And your different, so that's what's going on there. You have settings, and there's a lot going on here. And again, this is only an introduction. I just kind of want to give you a glimpse into what's going on. But you're able to control this audio headphone jack and select which mix you want to hear from. So maybe you just want to hear your live stream mix. Maybe you just want to hear your church mix and just listen through the headphones. I found that to be super helpful, because just like if you're in a studio, one of the things in mixing music, which is so important, is the idea of EQ slotting. And EQ slotting is any instrument or even vocals will have their primary tone, you could say, has a certain frequency that it's best taking advantage of. So a bass guitar is going to be using more of the lower EQ spectrum than a violin or a guitar or a vocal. Now on a vocal, you typically want to leave the higher end spectrum of your EQ mix. You want to save that for your vocals, because that's really some of those brights. You need to save that for your vocals, because a lot of that is the air, a lot of that are your consonants. And then something like a guitar, you really want to almost have a low pass filter on the top, and so you're taking a lot of that brights out completely, and so that you're literally making room for your vocal, you know, that particular range for your vocals. You know, on any given instrument, or okay, let's go back to vocals. On vocals, you would want to put, instead of a low pass filter, a high pass filter. So what that does is on your low end, you're cutting out all of the bass, or a lot of the bass, which is unnecessary, and leaving only a certain range. And that is super important, because if you allow every single channel to have everything, or every single frequency on the spectrum, well, then your music is gonna sound very muddy, very, very muddy. And so what you want to do is really start developing an ear, maybe listen to some tutorials on YouTube, and just build up your ear for this EQ spectrum. Kind of develop an ear for this, so that instead of sounding like mud, everything will come out nice and bright and actually fit together. That's when earphones can really help. Because if you're in a church and you're trying to mix all of your audio, and all of you're listening through is your speakers, well, it's going to be hard to have an objective viewpoint of what is actually going through your audio system. And what I found was, when I was working with an individual group, just as a sound check, doing the sound checks and trying to get them to sound good in this new system, was I listened through the headphones. And a lot of what I first did was EQ slottings, putting high pass and low pass filters on a lot of the individual channels, isolating the sounds that I wanted to hear, and then doing that with the headphones on, I was able to really get a sound that I liked. And then, after doing that, I actually found that the church sounded way, way better. And that's not something I could have done necessarily. I just wouldn't have been able to do that using the iPad and listening in church. Because by the time it goes to the speakers, which aren't necessarily very good with bass, or very good with brights, or just because you're in the middle of a huge church space, it's hard to have, or to listen, accurately to the individual sounds that are coming through. So, yeah. So you're able, anyway, the point being, you can go to settings and select your, which audio mix that you're listening to in the headphones. Then you can also, if you're using this as for USB, like more in a studio setting, or if you're trying to record, the music group in individual channels, well, this is where you set up the USB routing, so that all the channels are going to the USB channels that you want them to. If you go back to the main screen, then if I had an SD card put in here, then a little record button over here pop up, and I would be able to type in the information of, like, okay, what is this particular session called? I'd be able to give it a name, make sure the date is in there, even say which music group was responsible for this recording, and then select even which audio mix I want to hear from, whether it's from live stream or the church, and then hit the record button. And then you get a beautiful, just simple stereo recording on an SD card. And that will be in a WAV format. It's usually a big file, but that's okay. You'll have to just run it through a software afterwards, and then kind of maybe put it into an MP3 format, or just downsize it, because it does come out pretty big. Yeah. Ooh. This is, there's a little button over here. I'll have to show you, I think later in another episode, but this is where you would access all of your different saved presets or settings. Presets or settings for your different ensembles. And then all you need to do is select it, load it. You're also able to save presets for, let's say, a choir, and you have certain EQ settings or something that you really like, as well as compression. Well, if you save it, then you can then load it onto a different channel. There's a lot that's going on here, and it's really its own universe. It's the only way I can describe it. It's gonna take its own little episode, and I think what we're gonna do in that episode, we'll probably call it Presonus software, is show how to set up the UC surface from scratch. Because once it's actually set up, it's really a pleasure to use. But there is a learning curve when all of you're given is a blank slate and have to do everything from scratch, and you're renaming channels and assigning channels and trying to get all of your gains just right. Well, I think we'll talk about that in a different episode. So this whole system, for what it does, is super compact. Super compact, because each one of these units, what they're capable of doing is really, really amazing. These video encoders really do a phenomenal job in broadcasting beautiful quality video. This Presonus unit does an incredible job of processing so many channels and creating such a beautiful audio mix. And then this whole unit, what it's effective for and useful for are, I'd say, fairly large retreat size events, providing good quality audio. Because you can mic up an entire mass along with music and a band and everything, or whatever it might be. Well, you can do that. And then you can plug in your speakers into these outputs. So you can plug in your speakers, maybe they'll be on either side of the altar, into here and provide audio for the retreat. A larger scale version of this you might find in church. So maybe a 24 channel Presonus unit. And then your video encoders might be in the sacristy 100 feet away from your actual Presonus unit. But ultimately it's the same, as opposed to having 2 feet or even 1 foot where everything is, kind of isolated into here. It's the same idea. It's just a long cable to get from one connection to another, from either the sacristy to your music area. So, and then this also works for, makes live stream possible. Yeah. But then not only live stream, it can also quadruple up as a studio unit. So you're able to maybe take it into the middle of nowhere in the forest, which at least to me is a very appealing thought, just to record a music video. Kind of like the Piano Guys or something. Or you could do it in a studio or in a room or something, or you can record a special choir performance and use this as a USB audio interface, receive your multiple channels, and then post-process them. And then you can also really take your audio to a new level, which if you wanted to take that same mindset of you using those individual USB channels of your audio, routing them into a computer first, and then in the computer, getting your effects just right, Also inputting your different audio from maybe MIDI controllers and stuff, getting your virtual sounds. You can really take your audio to a new level. Video wise, what this unit could potentially have, but I didn't see as necessary, is a video mixer. So a video mixer, those can be also rack mounted, and that could have potentially been another space of 2U. Now those units, if you wanted something that would do pretty much what this does, it would probably cost you $800-900. But instead, and what that would do is you would input your HDMI cords and signals into the video mixer, and then it has maybe one screen. You just select with buttons which video you want to see, and then transitions that you want to use, and you kind of do everything on this hard in this panel. Well, I didn't really like the idea. I thought if we're gonna do live stream, I'd rather use something like OBS software. The OBS software, it's a digital software version of a video mixer. And so instead of just pressing buttons to change your channels and your video inputs, you're with mouse clicks, you're switching between your multiple USB video encoders. And as long as you have a powerful enough computer, I would say a gaming computer, it's what you'll want, and will be powerful enough to do that, then you're good to go. I guess that's kind of the funny thing with all of this too, is that I think with the live stream system, is the audience you're going to be reaching is, you might find is a little bit generational. A lot of your elderly people might have trouble finding live streams, or finding something like YouTube Live, or something like Twitch Live, or using Facebook. Now, that being said, I have been very impressed by some 80-year-olds who have put the time into learning how to access these live streams, especially during COVID, or but not just during COVID. I mean, like even those who are homebound, they still want to feel like they're in church. Something like this, creating something like this, building it, making all of these connections, and providing a live stream, all of a sudden you bring church to them. And I think that's a very, very powerful thing, wonderful thing to do. So generational. Because I just think it's a really cool thing that if you want to put on a good live stream, you gotta have something like a gaming computer, something that has enough RAM, that has enough video processing, a good graphics card, and then a good processor in there, because what you're going to be doing is very, very intensive. To deal and to effectively process 3 HDMI inputs, these USB signals, and then on top of that, to control this, or your audio and do all of that, and then to successfully upload that, it's very software intensive. And I think it's a really cool thing that in order to reach that generation, like the video gamers, you need a video gaming computer. I think it kind of has some sort of sense to it, which I'm still trying to crack open. Well, it's cool because a lot of those people who have the PS4s or the Xboxes, or even the very super powerful gaming computers, usually Windows-based, those are the people that also have access on those systems, even the PS4, to YouTube or to other similar platforms. And so from their whatever device they use, their gaming device, their iPhone, their computers, however they typically access this, all of their digital content, whatever they like to do, they can bring church to them, to their environment, to that particular platform. And if we can get that to be beautiful quality, that's an amazing thing. That's an amazing thing. And I think that's just something that we really haven't reached our full potential for. And I know even after COVID and after having already successfully developed a lot and implemented a lot, still haven't fully cracked it open, hardly, only scratched the surface, I would say. A lot of this, you don't have to do exactly in this way. A lot of these devices, you don't have to exactly get these devices. I know I've been talking about Presonus a lot. You don't necessarily have to get a Presonus. There are others out there. But the principle is the same. And the mindset between how all of these devices are connected together and used, and what you're eventually trying to get into or get them to. So your video inputs, your audio inputs, get them processed into a digital USB format into your computer, then that signal from the computer going then into the cloud, online, where then it is available on whatever platform you choose, and then disseminated. Well, that's the workflow. If you stop short of that, then I would say you're pursuing an inferior system and not heading in the right direction. But with Presonus, with something like these video encoders, and ultimately an open source free software like OBS, if you start there, you're leaving yourself, that's a good baseline, and you're leaving yourself room to grow, or you can stay right there and be perfectly content. So that's my recommendation. Alrighty, the episode on this 45-pound live stream Gator.